call the meeting of Capital Investment Committee today, Thursday, February 20th, 2025 to order. Members, we have a fun day planned. First off, may I have Representative Fredericks move to approve the minutes for February 18th?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, do we have any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, no opposed, fantastic. The minutes are approved and there is a quorum present. Members, I have an exciting day planned for myself too. I have a bill up, so I'm gonna leave you. I know, I'm so excited. It's been a couple of years. But at any rate, we are gonna hear today from some more governor bonding requests for state agencies. And then we're gonna hear from the Department of Corrections and Public Facility Authority. We'll talk about PFA, so it's gonna be fun. First up, we're gonna have the Department of Corrections, and then if you wanna state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, Vice Chair Fogelman will take over. She's super exciting, and she'll be fun too, so I will be back when I can. Thanks, members.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Paul Schnell. I'm the Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Corrections, and I want to first say thank you for the opportunity to testify on the governor's bonding bill priorities for the department. The DOC is the third largest state agency with a footprint that includes 11 prisons with 336 buildings covering more than 7.5 million square feet. This extensive infrastructure is critical to our mission and requires constant attention and upkeep. Our buildings, as you likely know, run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year-round. We have approximately 4,300 dedicated employees across the department, and we house about 8,300 people in our prisons. It's important to note that 96% of the department's funding comes directly from the state's general fund, which underscores how vital state support is for our operations. The DOC is heavily dependent on capital investments from the legislature. These funds are essential for maintaining the infrastructure of our facilities and ensuring that we can meet the ever-evolving needs. Members, we take our mission extremely seriously, and that is to transform lives for a safer Minnesota. That work is critical because 95% of those who are incarcerated in our prisons will return to communities across our state. Investing in infrastructure improvements for Minnesota state prisons is not just about sustaining buildings, it's about how we keep communities safe. Maintained facilities provide the necessary space for effective rehabilitative programs such as education, job training, mental health services. These programs play a critical role in reducing recidivism and helping the incarcerated individuals reintegrate successfully into the community upon release. When individuals are better prepared to return to the community, they are less likely to reoffend, which directly contributes to Minnesota's public safety. We have a duty to ensure that when individuals are released, they are equipped with the tools to succeed and contribute to safer, stronger communities. For those who have toured our facilities, it should not be surprising that our first priority and core necessity is asset preservation. The numbers on this slide speak for themselves. Of the deferred maintenance of all assets managed by state agencies, 33%, a full 1/3, is within the Department of Corrections. The estimated cost of improving all DOC infrastructure to just fair condition is $732 million. Currently, the department has 16 buildings that are in crisis condition and 61 buildings in poor condition. As I'm sure you've heard many times in this community, when maintenance is deferred, it only grows more expensive. Just 3 years ago, this estimate was $631 million. It has grown by $101 million in those 3 years. This significant cost is due to the age and complexity of these facilities. Prisons encompass many aspects similar to what would occur in a municipality, including healthcare clinics, water and sewage infrastructure, housing, grounds to maintain, classroom spaces, food service areas, and recreational spaces. They also include extensive and complex security systems that require ongoing maintenance for the safety and security of the facilities themselves. As you can see from these images, this is just a small sample of the deferred maintenance across our prison facilities. These are places where individuals live and work 24 hours a day. These photos do not provide the full story, so we have made significant efforts to ask legislators to come into our prisons. Over the last year, we have hosted 26 legislative tours, bringing in over 84 members of the House and Senate and over 55 staff members inside the walls and razor wire to see the work and conditions firsthand. Investing in these repairs and upgrades is essential for extending the lifespan of both our older and newer facilities. Timely maintenance helps prevent larger, more costly issues in the future. Many of our prisons are aging, with 2 facilities more than a century old. However, it's important to note that the oldest prisons, such as Minnesota Correctional Facility at Stillwater and St. Cloud, don't make up the majority of the asset preservation projects on our asset preservation list. In fact, even though they make up 53% of the DOC's deferred maintenance, 83% of our asset preservation projects are for facilities other than these 2. This means that the scale of investment required to maintain and improve our infrastructure goes well beyond our oldest facilities. By keeping facilities in good condition, we promote the safety and security of everyone in the system, our staff, and the people we serve. Properly maintained infrastructure allows for more efficient operations, reducing disruptions and long-term operational costs. I'll now turn it over to Carl Hunt, who is the DOC's Capital Resource Administrator, to briefly discuss his experiences in balancing the ongoing urgent asset preservation needs across the facility.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Carl Hunt, and I'm the Capital Resource Administrator for the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I'm here today to provide further detail into the importance of asset preservation, as it's our agency's top priority. This funding is not just about maintaining our buildings. It's about ensuring safe, secure, and functional environments for both those who work and live within our correctional facilities. Today, we are forecasting 40 critical projects, which can be completed with the governor's recommendation of $65.5 million in asset preservation funding. These projects include critical upgrades in water treatment systems, roofing, life safety upgrades, security infrastructure, and emergency generator replacements, along with much more. Projects that are essential to maintaining safe and operational facilities. But here's the challenge. Because of our deferred maintenance backlog of $732 million, emergency infrastructure issues arise continuously. Whether that's a water pipe breaking or a roof collapsing, these emergencies force us to divert resources away from other planned projects to address these immediate needs. Each time we do this, it pushes the other projects further down the line. Currently we have over 175 projects on hold, waiting for resources necessary for them to be completed. My team has been successful at managing through these events so far, with a large contributing factor being asset preservation funding. With the help of 2020 and 2023 capital appropriations, we've been able to tackle projects on the list and slow the growth of the deferred maintenance backlog. The backlog increased by just $9 million from 2023 to 2024, rather than the larger jumps we have seen in previous years, bringing the current to a total of $732 million. Continued capital investment into corrections is key to preventing future increases in deferred maintenance. It will allow the Department of Corrections to continue fulfilling its mission while ensuring that our facilities remain secure, operational, and well-maintained. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Commissioner Schnell to discuss our second bonding priority.
Commissioner Snell?
Madam Chair and members, beyond the AP, the second agency request this session is for critical expansion of the rehabilitative space at the prison in Rush City. For your reference, there is a separate handout in your material summarizing this project. Members, before I speak to the project and the need for the space, I want to address why, of all previous DOC bonding projects, did this one make it into the governor's bill. The need for this project is urgent. Since the prison was built 24 years ago, the state of Minnesota has not effectively engaged the high-risk men incarcerated there to improve public safety outcomes, to reduce our recidivism and to reduce crime, nor has it had done enough to mitigate the intergenerational impacts of incarceration, as men there are warehoused instead of rehabilitated. We cannot risk the impacts of past mistakes in prison design at this facility will be around for years to come. It is, in fact, our newest prison. Throughout my time as commissioner, it has become crystal clear that the severe lack of space at the Rush City Prison has resulted in lost opportunities to improve outcomes. When the prison was designed, the intention was for it to be a single bunked, and even then, it was also intended to have more programming space than was eventually built. However, before it opened in 2000, the decision was made to double bunk the facility, meaning twice as many men were incarcerated in the prison built for half that amount, and programming space for less than half. This lack of space for rehabilitative programming creates something of the worst condition and the worst practice in corrections, and that is an idle population. Idleness means that incarcerated individuals are not participating in programming. They are warehoused. And what we know about warehousing is that it increases the likelihood of recidivism. Today, about 1,000 men are incarcerated at Rush City, and 1/4 of them are entirely idle. Many more have some level of programming, but can use much more. Not only are critical opportunities for transformative and rehabilitation programming missed, like education, sex offender-specific treatment programming, substance use disorder treatment, mental health services, and job training, it also makes the prison less safe for everyone who lives in it and works in it. And those who sit idle during their incarceration are more likely to reoffend when they are released. The prison in Rush City has the highest rate of idleness in the Department of Corrections. The prison should have been built differently, and I ask this committee to consider righting the past wrong. We know better now, and we have data, and we have experience. And make no mistake, the prison at Rush City isn't going anywhere, and an expansion will be used for decades to come. It is the DOC's newest facility, as I said. It is also the one of the 3 level 4 or max security prisons that the state operates. And the other 2 are 100 years old. Based on the state's criminal code, the functioning of the criminal justice system, there is no doubt that men will continue to be incarcerated at the prison in Rush City. As it stands, they would likely be warehoused if we do not expand programming space. Moving on to the significant lost opportunities that this lack of space represents and its impact on public safety. I'd like to explain briefly a well-known and proven best practice in corrections, and that is the risk principle. The risk principle is simple, but central to effectual corrective corrections practice, and that is, if we want to create the best public safety outcomes, we need to invest in those with the highest risk levels. Members, those who are incarcerated at Rush City have some of the highest risk levels in our system. Yet providing them with rehabilitative services and interventions is critically limited. As you can see here, that 200 men incarcerated at Rush City do not have a high school diploma or GED. Providing this level of education is required of the DOC by statute. Subsequently, we use up all available classroom space to the capacity the fire marshal allows. Even when we use all classroom space for GED service, the wait list for programming is still extensive. Because of this, the DOC is not able to provide post-secondary educational and vocational opportunities at Rush City to the extent we would like. There is no space. As the DOC moves significantly to expand post-secondary programming at other facilities and partner with Minnesota higher education institutions across the state, we cannot accomplish this at the Rush City facility. Men who are incarcerated there are virtually unable to obtain a post-secondary credential or vocational certificate to help them succeed upon reentry. Further, over 50% of the population in the prison require behavioral health treatment. Yet the facility has just 2 small rooms for mental health appointments, requiring therapy staff to find spaces in common areas for appointments with incarcerated individuals. Over 300 men at this facility are on a wait list to receive sex offender-specific treatment programming, which is critical to reduce the risk of reoffending. The only space currently available for the sex offense treatment is a double-wide trailer with temporary movable walls and the use of sound machines outside the doors to ensure privacy during appointments. And it is no wonder that we have difficult recruiting and retaining therapists for our program because of the conditions that the program operates. I would be also remiss if I did not name the fact that the Rush City Prison has some of the worst racial disparities in the state's prison system, which is a sobering fact. We all know how incredibly stark the disparities are in all our prisons. At Rush City, 55% of the incarcerated men are Black and 7% are Native American. We must do better to provide these men an opportunity and a chance to succeed. Members, in closing, it's worth repeating that 95% of those who are incarcerated will return to communities across our state. We're all safer when they return successfully. Individuals who participate in rehabilitative programming while they are incarcerated are 43% less likely to return to prison. Our communities are safer and healthier if we can provide these programs and services. And critically, so are their families. It's painfully clear how dramatic the impact of incarceration can be on kids of incarcerated parents. And 73% of the people in our prisons are parents. Their success results in better outcomes for their kids. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to present the DOC's 2 requests. It is the nature of work in corrections that it is often out of sight and therefore out of mind. Behind the large brick walls and razor wire, the people who are incarcerated and those who work in these facilities are somewhat hidden. In the most basic sense, our prisons are where the failures of our society, the unaddressed traumas, the impossible challenges of our government are frequently hidden. Whether it be the failures of education or the child welfare systems, mental health access, economic opportunities, disparities, or racist systems, our corrections system is left to deal with these challenges and are expected to produce better outcomes. Your interest in those outcomes and the conditions of confinement can make a difference. We are not ignorant to the political realities on both sides of the aisle of investing in prisons, but outcomes of incarceration matter, as do the well-being of our staff, the incarcerated population, and their families. And with that, Madam Chair, I would stand for any questions you or the committee may have.
Thank you, Commissioner and Mr. Hunt, for your testimony. Before we move to member questions, I would just like to draw everyone's attention that we have 10th and 12th grade students here from Osceola High School in Osceola, Wisconsin. They are participating in the Capitol Historic Sites Voice of the People, Your Role in Minnesota Government tour and educational program. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming today. All right, we have some member questions. Representative Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner Schnell. On one of your slides, you talked about idle status, and I wanted to be, I think that I understand what you mean by that, but I want to be really, really clear that 25% of people that are in idle status, you're talking about that would participate in some sort of programming should it be available, but it's not available, so they're sitting there idle, and it is not a case where something may be available and they're just choosing not to participate.
Commissioner.
Madam Chair, Representative Frederick, no, these are people who can and would participate in programming were it available to them.
Okay.
Representative.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. So that I wanted to make sure that was accurate. Then my second part to that question then is the investments that you're making here, would that address that whole 25%? The investments that you're asking this committee to make, would that address that entire problem that you're describing?
Commissioner.
Madam Chair, Representative Frederick, yes, it would address that problem and provide adequate space to deliver treatment services and programming services to the entire population.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Snell and Representative Frederick. Next, we have Representative Scraba.
Perhaps the question should be directed to Representative Lee, but I'll let Commissioner Schnell answer it. Last year, it was on the bonding bill. We toured this site. It's woefully needed. When we walked outside the prison to the double wide and thinking that that's where all the sexual offenders have to go to get their re-education, and thinking, usually corrections are where you're paying a penance to do something you did, but everyone else can't go outside, but they can. So it's kind of like, is that a benefit or is that not good, depending on where you are mentally? This is what I remember of that day, kind of going like, this is backwards, this needs to be corrected. And I know last year it was kind of a priority. And I believe it was in last year's bill. If you could tell us how much we had put aside for this in last year's bill. Thank you. Thank you,
Commissioner?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Representative Straba, first of all, thank you for visiting that facility. I think, obviously this project would be contiguous to the existing structure, so that it would address some of that going outside stuff. While that, the opportunity to go out to that programming space, it's still a pretty tight leash, so to speak, that people have to follow. But I think at the end of the day, we really just need to get, that older trailer space moved, get this connected. I think it's much easier to maintain the safety of the facility when you're having people, incarcerated folks doing movement, which is always a concern for staff. So replacing that is important. This was included in last year's bonding proposal and bill, which we were grateful for. Unfortunately, as you all know, did not go. And I think the number was the same, was it not? $11 million. Oh, it has gone up $11 million, I'm told, because of just the inflationary factors.
Representative Scraba.
Madam Chair, what was the dollar amount again?
Commissioner? Mr. Hunt?
Madam Chair and members, the 2024 capital request for that priority was around 46 million and change. This year it escalated by $11 million. That escalation was driven by MMB's escalation chart, as well as stretching the duration of that project a little bit to fully make it through the design process and the construction process. It was a little too tight in the 2024 request, which we've learned and corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Representative Scraba, do you have any follow-up?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Breyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I was also very struck by a number of things when our last tour to the Rush City facility. And I've held on to the image of the two men double bunked in their room who very generously let us go into their personal space, which I appreciated. Recognizing that this request is about programming space, I'm just interested in whether there are plans or hopes in the future for addressing the double bunking problem that's gone on basically since the facility opened. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Madam Chair, Representative Breyer, yes, thank you again for visiting. I think the goal certainly in the long haul would be to address double bunking. It does become critical. We don't see that happening anytime in the immediate future. And one of the things that we are doing is working to do things like creation of honors units, and these honors units become a bit more of therapeutic communities, and in many instances they are single bunked. And so we're working with our population management people to see what options we face. But as you know, providing some relief there creates pressures in other facilities. And so those are some of the challenges. We don't, because of just the realities of where we sit and the challenges around our older infrastructure, we don't see probably going single bunking here anytime in the near future. And I'm talking about the next decade across that facility.
Representative Ryer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make real for people, two adult men living in a very small space. I don't know the dimensions, but with their clothing, with their possessions, with no privacy ever, and being entitled to a certain level of dignity and quality of life, even as they're incarcerated, and recognizing that 95% of them will return to the community. I would hope that Minnesota will look at that and that we'll make that a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ryer. Next, we have Lead Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner and team, for coming to present today. So just real quickly on just Rush City, kind of building off of what Representative Frederick and Ryer were talking about. So in the slide, you said 328 men incarcerated are on the wait list. And so if we were to get this funding going, do this programming spaces and whatnot, about how many of the folks on the wait list can we actually put through the program, and what is the duration in the program, and how soon can we make this wait list go down?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Representative or Lead Lee, we would, one of our huge priorities right now is to really focus on getting the backlog of treatment needs met, and especially among the sex offender population. We know that, these are areas of considerable concern for policymakers like all of you, as well as our communities. And we know that treatment works. What we would anticipate is that this would, or this built out, when this is built out, we would be, again, to be able to deliver, a qualified kind of treatment set in a qualified treatment setting and appropriate mental health space to run a sex offender treatment program that would address about 30 people at 30 to 35 people at any given time would be in sex offender specific treatment. Now, we are also looking at the possibility of addressing some other treatment needs there and mental health needs that would be a part of this, as well as educational and vocational training space. But that sex offender population treatment space would be about 35 at any given time. That program is really length dependent upon the level of risk the person is assessed to have. The maximum treatment time is about 17 months.
Lead Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then just going into just the request. So I believe in the governor's presentation of asset preservation for this specifically, in the documents that we have received before, it was $65 million in GO bonds. But in the presentation today, you have it broken down between $60 million for GO bonds and $5 million in cash. And so can you clarify, is the $5 million in cash really cash? Is it going to be in the operating budget, or are you asking this committee for cash too?
Commissioner Schnell.
Madam Chair, and I can also have Carl answer as well, but really, I think, Lee, the goal with the cash is we have, as part of much of our these projects, especially large security projects, elements of them do not meet the state bonding requirements, because things like computers that support the electronic security systems don't have the duration, the lifespan in order to be bonded. And so therefore, those dollars address a lot of the shorter term asset needs.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members, I'll expand on what Commissioner Snell stated. Those funds are asset preservation funds. They will abide by all of this stuff in the asset preservation statute, except for there's a cash component to it. So the cash component will get us around, just as Commissioner stated, around the life cycle of those systems. Systems that do not meet the 10-year life cycle requirement, but they are not, it's not wild cash, it's asset preservation cash.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Leadley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe just more of a comment. Really appreciate you bringing this by again, Commissioner, your effort around our correction system. And I think that it's, really important for all of us as we look at the increase in costs over just a year, Madam Chair, with asset preservation going up 100 million and this project for Rush City going up 11 million. And so I think it's crucial for us to get a bonding bill this year. And so I'm hopeful that, the two of us could work together with our colleagues on the other body to get something done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Leadley, I share your sentiments. I too would like to get a bonding bill done this year and next year. All right, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I very much appreciate the tours. Some of us, well, I think maybe Representative Hanson and I have been doing these tours for quite a few years, and I'm still always remember Shakopee. You didn't even have a fence around there. We toured it many times, and so you've come a long way. Right there in that little neighborhood with no fence. Well, you kind of had a fence. You had a hedge line.
Yeah.
So anyways, Commissioner, nice to see you. I continue to be worried about staff, and then at the same time, it's interesting what Representative Ryer said with the privacy issues, but I'm worried about your 4,300 staff and the clients and their safety, but just kind of curious with this. I mean, obviously these bills, your intent is to help both of those areas, but I just want it to be confirmed that the staff is going to be safer if we're to do this. And, we've had, in Stillwater and some horrible things happen to staff, and that's top of mind to me. And then we've also had, where some clients have had some, and not necessarily in your facilities, but other facilities. And so I'm sensitive to that side as well. So it's interesting to hear about the privacy, because I would be inclined to have more cameras, to make sure people are safe in their rooms or staff moving through the facilities, but then you're balancing with privacy. So I guess I would probably lean more towards safety. So I just would like to hear how we're doing for our staff, if this would help.
Commissioner Schnell.
Madam Chair, Representative Lilly, again, thank you for visiting and your support of the prisons and the staff. I think that has been one of the biggest concerns, and I will say that we're doing a tremendous amount of work in really looking at what is our prison system, our needs, and we had some of these conversations last year, and that really relates, I think, heavily to the issue of staff safety, and in particular at our oldest facilities. For those that may not have been there, if you go to Stillwater or to St. Cloud, you're talking about 4 or 5 tiers of traditional cells. And staff are operating and working on those tiers. And we've had very near tragedies where staff have been assaulted by people up on a 3rd or 4th tier. And just great luck and fortune that they didn't get pushed down onto the concrete floor below. We have done some recent study stuff around addressing this and what it would take to look at the broader issue of what's the future of Minnesota prison system when we have 2 facilities that are in excess of 100 years old, and to make them safe, truly safe in accordance with today's standards, like the K buildings that we have at Faribault, or even the newer design work that is at Rush City, which is much more safe for our staff. That's not possible in those old facilities. So as a state, we're going to need to address what this looks like, and with some help, we did put together some dollars, and we'll have the opportunity to speak to some of this going forward around what it would take to truly address staff safety at our oldest facilities.
Representative Lilly, you're good? All right. Next up, we have Representative Perez Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is in regards to, I see the numbers in regards to the racial disparities from the individuals that are incarcerated. My question is, what is the, cultural competence, or how much staff, what are the diverse in your staff across the departments, across the state prisons?
Commissioner Schnell?
Madam Chair, Representative, I think when, we still have a majority of our staff, we do not reflect the population. The makeup of our staff does not reflect the reality of the percentage of people who are incarcerated. And we have made tremendous efforts around trying to recruit to ensure that the people who work in these prisons look more like the population and understand the realities that many of the people inside face. And while we have made progress, and I can report that our hiring efforts have been considerably successful since the settlement of the last contract, so that today we are really operating at full staff. And our recruitment efforts, even around diversification, have been improved dramatically. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that for you.
Representative Perez-Vega.
Thank you. Yes, and on addressing that, you have programmings regarding behavioral services, the social services, educational services, religious services. When I took a couple tours around with our DLC, and thank you for inviting me, I went alongside with my other 65 Representative Hussein. We spoke with the wardens, we spoke with the inmates. A lot of what I was hearing was that there was a lack and a shortage of that connection when we talk about our non-English speaking inmates, when we talk about the differences of religions that were being more celebrated or more attentive to their holidays and schedules, and even fasting when we think about Eid. That's why I really would like to get those numbers back, because those are the things here at the state that we should be able to connect and see how we can be supportive to everyone around there, from staff as well as the inmates.
Thank you, Representative Perez-Vega. Do you have anything else to add, Commissioner Schnell?
Madam Chair, Representative Vega, I think you speak to this, and coming out of as a police chief prior to serving in this role, this was the same issue that we really had in policing. Was we wanted to make sure that we were trying to be more reflective and responsive to the needs of the people who are inside. And I think as we look at what happens in these prisons, they're tough environments to work in, and we face considerable challenges. But the research is crystal clear that if we want better outcomes, we have to make investments in rehabilitative services and programs. And that's got to, if public safety is what corrections is and should be about, then these investments become critical. And we would just ask for your support going forward to help us achieve this objective for Minnesota.
Thank you, Commissioner Schnell. Representative Perez-Vega, and then we're going to move on because we have a really riveting presentation from PFA today that we want to get to.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think the PFA will come into more questions for me regarding the water issues and the testings, and to see how frequent they are. I received several emails from constituents who family members were inmates and concerned regarding Stillwater, Oak Park, and how that's being facilitated. But I think we're going to move forward and hear more from PFAs on that. But if you'd like to follow up on how much more research is being done and how consistent are those testings happening in these facilities?
Commissioner Schnell?
Madam Chair, yes, we do regular testing, and Mr. Hunt could address that if you'd like to address it today, but we can absolutely get that information to you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, thank you for presenting today in front of our committee. Thanks for your time, and
thank you.
we'll be in touch. Next up, we have Ms. Karen Burkholz, the Deputy Director of Minnesota Public Facilities Authority. And we are going to have some scary discussions about the need for clean water around our state. So hope everybody's paying attention and taking notes. This is one of the topic areas that keep me awake at night. Please state your name for the record, and you may proceed with your testimony and presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Karen Burkholtz. I'm the Deputy Director of the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority. I'm going to open with some overview comments on the PFA, and then I will go into what the capital budget requests are as proposed in the governor's budget. I recall one of the questions from staff was, how did these requests compare to last year? And they are the same in terms of dollar amounts. And so with that, I'll open up with my comments. The Minnesota Public Facilities Authority is a multi-agency authority providing municipal financing expertise and infrastructure financing programs to enhance public health and the state's environmental quality and economic vitality. The governing body of the MPFA are the commissioners from 6 state agencies, and the Commissioner of Deeds serves as the chair. Our mission and priorities are to manage RLF, Revolving Loan Fund, assets to be a stable source for infrastructure financing into perpetuity. The phrase into perpetuity is actually in statute. We also provide financing programs supporting water quality, public health, and other priorities as identified by the MPFA member agencies. We help local governments maintain and improve the condition of infrastructure assets while keeping rates affordable for their residents. MPFA finances most types of municipal wastewater and drinking water projects in cooperation with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, MPCA, and the Minnesota Department of Health, MDH. And the activities include replacing aging infrastructure, these are pipes and treatment facilities, improving systems for better service and efficiency, upgrading treatment facilities to improve water quality, and extending service to meet existing needs. All projects are ranked on the project priority lists, PPL, I'll be saying PPL quite a bit today, as developed annually by MPCA and MDH. Those 2 PPLs become the source information for us developing the intended use plans, IUPs, which are an annual process for us. And we provide then the financing to cities of all sizes across our state. And that includes low interest rate loans available to all projects in the fundable range of the IUPs, and also targeted grants based on affordability and specific project type. And I'll figure out how to do this. And here we have the proposals. By statute, the Clean Water and Drinking Water Revolving Funds are supported by annual federal capitalization grants, we call them CAP grants, requiring 20% state match. Repayments revolve back to pay PFA revenue bond debt service and to make new loans. Federal funds include principal forgiveness grants for disadvantaged communities and green infrastructure. The governor's capital budget request for the PFA this time totals a little over $99 million, including state match for the federal CAP grants and funding for 3 other programs that I'll describe in turn for you. The $39 million in state match will unlock $215 million in federal funds. After MPCA and MDH complete their annual PPL process, the PFA builds the IUPs for the clean water and drinking water programs. The IUPs present clean water and drinking water projects eligible to apply for funding and receive loans during a fiscal year. Other eligible activities to be funded and information on the operations and financial status of the drinking water and clean water revolving funds. The IUPs serve as the basis for the state's applications for federal drinking water and clean water state revolving funds from the EPA. In 2023, the PFA received state match needed for the 2024 regular, we call it base, federal capitalization grants and year 3 Infrastructure Investment and Job Act supplemental funds. As indicated on this slide, that 414 million is now fully allocated. The PFA does not have state match for the federal funds beyond that. The availability of funds is a consideration when the board determines the IUP fundable range each year. And that's for both IUPs, clean water and drinking water. By rule, carryover projects from prior IUPs, these are projects that have been certified by PCA and by MDH. Those carry forward into the new IUP within the fundable range. And they're always included in that fundable range as that's established by rule. At our October 2024 board meeting, the MPFA board acted that the 2025 IUPs for clean water and drinking water would be limited to the carry-forward projects, the carryover projects, because the bonding bill, as you mentioned, wasn't enacted last year. The projects total on this list represents the unfunded projects in both the 2025 drinking water and clean water IUPs that could have been funded had we had the bonding bill enacted. I'm not going to belabor that because you were here, you know what it's like. I'll move on then to the next program, which is the Water Infrastructure Grant Program, WIF. I have all of the 3 subsequent programs on this one slide, but I'll speak in turn in somewhat depth on each one of them because I believe there are some new members on this committee, and so I thought I'd just add some more detail for you. The Water Infrastructure Fund Grant Program, we call it WIF, was established in state statute and provides grants to cities to replace aging infrastructure that otherwise would be unaffordable. The goal is to reduce the risk of major system failure. The MPFA packages with grants with our other programming for the revolving loan funds or for very small communities, the USDA Rural Development Funding for small cities. Municipalities seeking WIF grants must be listed on the 2 PPLs, and then we rank them within the IUPs. And the difference between the PPLs and the IUPs is that the PPL covers a 5-year span of time. The IUPs cover a fiscal year. It's anticipated that these projects that get listed on the IUPs are ready to go. They're going to be certified, will receive as-bid costs, and they'll be going to construction. So that's the distinction between the PPL concept and the IUP concept. We award grants to the eligible projects based on their priority in those PPLs and their readiness to proceed. And following the statute, each fiscal year, the MPFA reserves available funds for these eligible projects. And what happens when they come in and they're ready to go? Imagine if there was a project that their as-bids came in higher. If we have the available WIF dollars, we will help them achieve that higher bid cost so that the project is funded in whole. The way that we make the decisions around these grant dollars is really individualized to the community on a case-by-case basis. There is no formula other than let's do our best for each community that we serve. The affordability criteria that we apply is set in state statute and is based on the average system costs per household. Available WIF criteria is, and federal principal forgiveness funds. Federal principal forgiveness funds is EPA code word for grants, just so you know. Are reserved to meet those estimated affordability grant needs for all carryover projects that received technical approval in the prior fiscal years based on current estimates. Additional appropriations will be needed to meet future demand for grant dollars, and that's for 2025 and beyond. Currently, new projects, except for the high priority drinking water, emerging contaminant projects are not included in the 2025 IUP fundable range due to the lack of available resources. The list of potential WIF eligible projects may grow as additional project information is received. Total estimated unfunded WIF needs, this is offset by significant IIJA principal forgiveness funds for identified projects on the 2025 PPLs are $64 million for drinking water and $39 million for clean water. The slide indicates the estimated WIF need for both clean water and drinking water projects. Moving on to the Point Source Implementation Grant, PSIG. This program was also established in state statute and provides grants to help cities upgrade water treatment facilities to improve water quality by meeting more stringent permit requirements. Eligible projects reduce specific pollutants such as phosphorus, mercury, and chlorides. The PSIG eligible project components, it's not the entire project, it's the part of the project that addresses reducing those specific pollutants, covers 80% of eligible project costs up to $7 million. Each July, we at the PFA accept applications from communities for PSIG. So that's going to come up this year annually. And we then reserve grant funding for projects that receive the MPCA approval and certification by the end of each state fiscal year. And these are awarded based on as-bid costs and as funding is available. Some communities do end up waiting until the grant dollars become available. Each year in February, the MPFA submits an estimated funding needs report to the legislature. And this actually details, we just submitted at the beginning of the month, this was by Jeff Freeman, our former executive director, who's now retired, if you didn't know. And we have a new executive director as of yesterday, who's Steve Walter, our current CFO, is now promoted up to the executive director position. At any rate, we submit this report to the legislature annually. And this looks at what is our forecasted demand and need for both WIF and PSIG. And I believe you have a thick packet of supplementary information from us that includes this report. Just so you know, this report indicates that the estimated total unfunded PSIG grant need is approximately $124 million for 26 projects. The governor's capital budget request for PSIG is a little over $18 million. Finally, I'll talk about emerging contaminants. This is a new grant program that's proposed to supplement federal EC dollars to increase the grant percentages and caps for projects to treat manganese and PFAS substances in municipal water systems. And there are 4 sort of goals with this new program, and I'll state those for you. The proposed legislation creates this new funding program designed to address projects necessary to comply with current drinking water emerging contaminant concerns. The EC program will ensure water systems across the state provide safe and reliable water to their residents. The state funds from this program will be partnered with federal funds to help us reach more water systems to address their specific emerging contaminant concerns. And the new program is designed to fit within the framework that's already established and well-known for our Drinking Water Revolving Fund program. The federal funds we hope to leverage are in the IIJA, which includes dedicated funds over a 5-year period to address emerging contaminants in community water systems. Minnesota expects to receive about $120 million over the 5-year period, including these federal funds through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund and dedicated federal funds for small and disadvantaged communities. The requested state funds will supplement the available federal funds to provide 80% grants up to $12 million to local governments for projects to address emerging contaminants. The Department of Health, estimates that the total cost to provide these grants to all impacted communities, municipalities statewide, is $450 million. Local governments will be able to access MPFA's Drinking Water Revolving Fund low-interest rate loans for project costs that exceed the limits for state emerging contaminant grants. And additionally, some projects may be eligible based on affordability criteria for WIF on top of the EC to try to manage and make these projects as affordable as possible for the communities. You may ask what an emerging contaminant is. And I thought I would just recount what it is so that all of us are on the same page here. Is a substance or microorganism including manufactured or naturally occurring physical, chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear material which is known or anticipated in the environment which may pose newly identified or re-emerging risks to human health, aquatic life, or the environment. Except for PFAS, ECs are contaminants that do not have water quality criteria established by the EPA under the Clean Water Act, Sections 304.A. In addition to the financing requests, the budget requests, there are some policy requests that accompany these. And I will add that some of these are to increase the funding cap. This is true for the WIF program and the PSIG program. The maximum grant amounts for each were set back in 2017. And because of increasing project costs, the inflationary factors that we've been hearing about for a number of years now, and also project complexities in terms of the regulatory environment and some of the other compliance things, the thought is to increase that cap to, as noted on your screen, it's to 10 million for WIF from 5 million and increasing it for PSIG from 7 million to 12 million. And then the other recommendations are provided there for you. I would like in closing to say that the MPFA, since our inception in 1987, our first funding cycle was in 1989. We've awarded now over 6.09 billion in state to projects statewide. And this includes 5.22 billion as low interest rate loans and 1.21 billion in grants. And importantly, for the communities that we serve, it represents over $1 billion in interest rate savings because our rates and terms are very affordable for the local governments that we serve. To give you some scale of activity that we've been doing, last year, fiscal year '24, we awarded $363 million through 74 funding agreements. And of that, 169 million were as low interest rate loans and 184 million as grants. So far this year, in fiscal year 2025, we've awarded over 435 million to 112 projects, and it's only February. So we have a lot of work ahead of us and a very, very busy and dedicated team. At that point, I'd like to conclude my comments and thank you for your time, and I'm happy to address any questions that you may have. I do have my colleagues from MDH and MPCA here. If there are any technical questions that you have that I can't respond to, I'm sure that they will be able to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Burkholz. Members, Representative Hansen, I knew you would not let me down. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to the committee. You know, we listen to year after year, we listen to this about things being available all across the state, but the reality is they're not. They're not. And the reason is Minnesota statute, section 446A.072, that sets affordability criteria on average system cost per household. And what that does is it excludes communities in the metro area because of the per capita. And we have tried to change that year after year and are met with, shall I say, solid opposition to changing the status quo. Because the status quo works for some people. And I'll just use my community for example. $3 million request for a grant for radium in the water. Radium in the water is bad. Bad. But if my community was in greater Minnesota, it would have got a grant. But instead it has a loan because of the per capita. So that goes to the property taxpayers to pay that principal and the interest. And when you look through all of this with all the programs, and then we applied the federal money, and then we apply the lead service line replacement to the same criteria of affordability, there are many people who are left out of the system because of the status quo and protecting the status quo. So I want to know if the PFA, and that means all the agencies that are are willing to make changes to the affordability criteria.
Ms. Burkholz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Hansen. I'd like to, you mentioned lead service lines, and I'd like to speak to that. You'll note that last year, we did have a $10 million placeholder request in the capital budget for lead service lines. We did not include that this year because there is enough funding now to, at least to get us up to 2026. The lead service line program applies an affordability calculation that's different from what we have in statute. It actually is a disadvantaged community calculation that we conduct. And based on that, communities, regardless of where they are, greater Minnesota or within the metropolitan region, get a benefit from that. Certain jurisdictions like Minneapolis, because of the way that their system works for their water and the way that we're replacing, the way that they have to replace the lead service lines, they're all on the private side. And the legislature's vision and commitment that these lines would be replaced at no cost to the communities or the residents is something we are striving very hard to honor. And so in Minneapolis, because they are private, the dollars are actually grant dollars. And we are using the federal loan dollars initially for communities that don't meet the affordability, but then we will trade those dollars out so that even communities here in the metropolitan region would not be paying a loan for the lead service line replacement. We think that's really important and to honor that the legislature's vision, which was, I think, the only state in the country to do this. Finally, New York is following in our stead and starting to do a state grant program for LSLR replacement. We did not request anything this session. We are in discussions now with our partner agencies and our stakeholder groups for the future. I just wanted to let you know that we are going to be coming back for 2026 for LSLR to keep this going and make sure we achieve the commitment of the state to have all these lines replaced by 2033. So that's one part. In terms of how to get to the affordability, I think I need to defer to my new executive director and leadership because it just flipped yesterday. And so, you know, we have a lot of change going on within our agency. And I did hear you last year when you raised these concerns. I was in the room when you did. And so I hear you and we'll be talking. Thank you.
Representative Hansen.
Well, on behalf of the 42,500 stakeholders I represent, I would ask for you to apply the lead service line affordability criteria to the other programs so that you're reaching disadvantaged communities wherever they are in the state.
Representative Perez-Vega.
I'd like to follow up, Madam Chair, just on Representative Hansen's comments, just regards, you mentioned Minneapolis, and this is South St. Paul,
Right.
St. Paul, and we have a deep housing crisis in our communities, poverty in our communities. So I just want to iterate that it's a little sensitive when you disregard that. Many of the constituents that we represent do not live above income and are the hard laborers of the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Ms. Burkholz.
Duly noted.
Oh, it
Thank
was just a
you.
comment,
I think
okay.
was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director, for the presentation. And so I have contacted MMB in general around, you know, federal fundings and how has that been impacted and whatnot. And I think in the conversation, they mentioned that with regards to some of the executive orders from the Trump administration, at one point, funding for our revolving funds were on pause. So can you give us an update of what happened and what is the status right now?
Thank you.
Ms. Burkholz.
Chair, thank you, Lead Lee. Yes, last month, when the executive order related to America's energy was issued by the White House, it included language pausing all disbursements as federal grants and loans until such time that OMB could determine if there's a nexus between these programs and promoting energy. The nexus early on with the clean water and drinking water was not there. However, we had to wait until there were court challenges. The U.S. District Court in Rhode Island actually put into effect a restraining order. And it was only after that, which was after February 3rd, where we received the notice from EPA that any pause on our funding from the federal level to the state was lifted. And we are now able to access those accounts that we need to access. And we are able to pursue funding applications for those dollars that we are eligible to apply for now. Some of that 2024 match that I mentioned that you provided to us is being used to secure federal CAP grant dollars and IIJ dollars that we qualify for, and we are pursuing those right now and are going to be applying next month. The confusion for our communities, and there were many calls that came our way when this news came, was that we use the word disbursement in our process too. On our monthly disbursements, when we're reimbursing communities for expenses incurred, that's on a disbursement request form with all the required, invoices and everything to justify the expense. And so communities thought that we were no longer able to reimburse them for incurred costs. And that was not the case. We were able to do so. The pause did extend a little bit more deeply and a little bit longer just for lead service lines and that funding, the federal funding, but that now has been resolved as well. Our federal partners are taking it day by day. They don't know what tomorrow will hold for them. As an anecdote, our partners in USDA Rural Development told us yesterday that as of last Friday, they have a 25% reduction in their workforce here in the state. And so I just mentioned that to you because this could potentially slow down some of our process as, our federal partners are dealing with the change. But we intend to go forward until we can't, or something else happens that stops us. But we had a pause for like 10 days representatively until this was resolved, and then we got the confirmation from EPA that it indeed was, and we were proceeding business as usual.
Leadley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that report, Director. Really appreciate knowing that our communities across the state of Minnesota are, getting their reimbursement back. And so just going quickly to the request around the PSIG and the WIF program real quickly. For PSIG, I remember back in 2023, we appropriated from the committee the amount of around $80 million. And then looking at the needs report on page 13, appropriations, that's available as of July 1st of 2024, from state bonding at least, it was $70 million. And so it seems to me that, only from 2023 to 2024, only 10 million of the appropriations that we had in 2023 was spent. So can you let us know what is, the time frame for spending some of these dollars, knowing that you're going to ask for 18 million this year? And so if we appropriate and have a bill this year at the 18 million, will all of this be spent, or how do you really move forward, knowing that, we have a small budget this year, but, there's still 70 million left in the PSIG program?
Ms. Burkholz.
Thank you, Chair Rep. Lee. If you could indulge me, I will get you that response, and in that response, I'll explain on how we work PSIG to maximize the ability to allocate those grant dollars, where it could be that the dollars are committed to a project, but they haven't been awarded yet. And that difference could be accounting for some of that, but I need to confirm that for you, and we will report back to committee staff and your staff so that we can get that answered. Thank you.
Leadley.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director. I think that applies, to the WIF,
Yep.
the drinking water and clean water. And then just real quickly, I see on the estimated funding needs report too, there's a potential for transferring funds from the, I believe the clean water funds, the drinking water funds. And so do you have current authority to do so, or do you need authority from us at the legislature to make that transfer? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Burkholz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Lee. We have the authority to do that. This has been a longstanding practice. Would it be that, we could do it in a less cumbersome way that it actually ends up having to be done? That's been part of our conversation with our partners, but it's not something that we need the authority for at this point in time. Thank you.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry to come back twice, but on the emerging contaminants, last year we had a hearing with the Attorney General on PFAS and talking about there were a couple of class action suits that were in process. And maybe it would be good to have, if we're having emergent contaminants and people are looking for PFAS water things, for an update, on what those funds are, how much are coming into, which cities opted into those class action suits, which didn't, and how much money they get, so we can, when we're getting the PFA things, I don't know if Lead Lee and you could work that out, maybe?
Representative Hansen, are you asking to have them in front of the committee? Okay, you want to put that on our list? Thank you. Members from Representative Scrabo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I'm a very ardent supporter of PFA. I'm from a community that gets PSIG, gets everything. I mean, it works for greater Minnesota, it's perhaps if we need to look at having a matching program, the Met Council has you involved there. We could look at something like that. There's not enough here for what we have now. Add more, and now nobody gets anything, So, I mean, I feel, I was on the tour, I saw all the stuff down here, and it is, it's a heck of a struggle, because the MPCA puts a freeze on the salting the water on the Minnesota River. Now you have to fix your wastewater, or you fix your water. You have to fix one of the two because the discharge is wrong. And it's not one city, it's every city along the way, because they're drawing from the same water source. So it's almost as if somebody knows before this happens. So I'm wondering if there's ever gonna be any coordination between the agencies so that it doesn't come here with an aha, like, here you go. Is there some communication throughout this process? As I'm getting more and more legs under me on this committee, I'm understanding the bigger picture more. And we still want to, clean water all the time, that's a must. But how can we alleviate these big influxes? How do we work together? And I know USDA has been a great supporter of these programs, and I hope they stay in there. I'm confident that any program that the federal government gives money to that actually hits the people, I don't see a whole lot of that being cut. It's the stuff that's not hitting the people that probably will get cut, that's out there in the land. That's my opinion. But do you have any insight on that? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Burkholz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Scarba. Couple of things. When we were talking about WIF and PSIC, one thing that I failed to mention is that we apply the WIF analysis to see about affordability and hardship to all projects that we're considering. It is not just for projects within Greater Minnesota, it's all projects that are on our IUPs that are coming through for funding. And that helps us know the fiscal status of things. And is the funding adequate to reach all communities with the massive grant demand, no. For your other question about how do we coordinate between agencies so that issues like saltwater incursion into the water systems, that we're not siloed, I think is what you're talking about, is that DOT is one of our MPFA partner agencies. There's actually a small program, rarely used, that we pass funding through to DOT for. So they are one of our agencies, and they are on the board, actually, the MPFA board. And so there are opportunities for coordination and conversation with our agencies, our sister agencies.
All right. Any other member questions? Wow. All right, thank you, Ms. Burkholz, for coming in front of our committee today. And that concludes today's hearing for the most part. Members, next Tuesday is a fun day, okay? Instead of us going on a trip to the zoo is going to come to us. Okay, so we're gonna see some little animals. It'll be a fun day with the Historical Society, the MPCA sprinkled in as well. So, you know, it is what it is. And then 1 week from today, we're trying to figure that out. So maybe Representative Hansen, perhaps Joe's gonna work on seeing if the AG can come in next Thursday. And next Thursday as well will be the eve of Representative Hansen's birthday and which is on Saturday, March 1st. So hopefully Representative Hansen goes and picks up some delicious treats for us to share in honor of our upcoming birthday. So, with that said, members, if there's no other business before the committee, our next meeting will be then Tuesday, February 25th. Like I said, we'll have the zoo, Historical Society, MPCA.
Met Council.
Oh, Met Council, not MPCA, the Met Council. Scratch MPCA, Met Council. To me, they're the same thing some days, so, you know, real fun. But at any rate, our meeting is adjourned.